Hi, this is Joe again with another review. But in this video, I want to be discussing, three episodes of one video. At least I want to try to. I want to discuss the History Channel series, History's Greatest Mysteries. And I'm only going to pick out 3 episodes because it's pretty much on the same subject. So that's why I'm only picking this 3. Excuse me. For those of you who don't know the series, or don't have watched the series, it's a newer series from the History Channel, and they only had like 2 seasons so far. And during the first season, it's mostly 2-hour episodes. And in the second season, they reduced it to like a 1-hour show. It was all hosted by actor Lawrence Fishburne, who tries to do a good job. He does have a voice that's good enough to maybe scare you a little bit. Maybe not to the extent of Robert Stack when he hosted Unsolved Mysteries. Robert Stack, that is. But he does a decent job because he has a good enough voice to be a narrator for a series like this. But for this video, I'm only going to be discussing one particular subject, and they had a 3-parter one, and that is, of course, the story of Roswell, New Mexico. You know the UFO crash that happened in Roswell, New Mexico, which is going to be 75 years just this coming week. The week over this video, or the next week, because on July 8th, 1947, the Army Air Force base in Roswell, New Mexico, put a statement out saying that they have found remains or recovered remains of a crashed UFO. So since the 75th anniversary is just coming up, and that's in a week's time here, I figured do a show or a review of the History's Greatest Mysteries of the Roswell crash. So like Roswell, the first witness, as it was captured, and they did 6 hours of this. I am not kidding. They did a 6-hour thing because when History's Greatest Mysteries started, like I just said, it was a 2-hour series, and so they had a 3-parter. So each part was like 2 hours. So if you sit there, it's like 6 hours watching this thing. With the commercials. Good thing in DVR is like fast through the commercials faster. But the whole thing is what they should have done. I know the microphone is picking it up, but I'm just having a major thunderstorm here in New York City as I'm recording this. So if you happen to hear a little thunder or a couple of flashes of lightning, you know what it is. Just want to put that out there before I go on. Now, the History's Greatest Mysteries, with the Roswell crash, is 6 hours of this subject, which is a little. I think it was very booked as many minutes as they can out of the Roswell thing. I mean, there were plenty of documentaries and plenty of shows you can see here on YouTube about Roswell. The story, of course, the most famous one was the Unsolved Mysteries recreation of it. It was hosted by Robert Stack, which is like season 2 episode, the season premiere episode of season 2. Well, season 2 episode 1 of Unsolved Mysteries, which is the Roswell crash, and there was another episode they did later on in the series about the mysteries of alien beings, which gives you an update on the Roswell thing on that episode as well, which has the interview with Glenn Dennis, the mortician from Roswell who claimed to have seen the bodies as well, or knew about the alien autopsy, which is another show which I already did a review of that, so look for that here on my YouTube channel if you haven't already looked at it. But the History's Greatest Mysteries, the majority of that show, over the 3 parts, was talking about this journal that was in the possession of Major Jesse Marcel, who was, or Jesse Marcel Sr., who was the intelligence officer of the 509 bomb group, who was the only nuclear-powered bombing group in the world at that time. And he was the one who was the very first person to actually investigate the crash at Roswell. And he believed, after knowing all the kinds of weather balloons and all this type of thing, he believed that was a crash from an actual UFO or flying saucer, which was the term they used at the time, was flying saucer. And so he believed it was that. And in his possession, he had this journal. He wrote down notes and stuff like that. And the investigators got this journal from Jesse Marcel's grandchildren. Jesse Marcel Jr., actually Jesse Marcel's son, died not too long before the series was filmed. So, or this documentary was filmed, I should say. So he died of a heart attack like a year or 2 years before this. So he was one of the few who was, alive for so many years that actually held the actual debris in his hands. But fortunately, like I said, he died like not too long before they filmed this documentary. And what happened was he found the hieroglyphics, what he described as an I-beam, with the hieroglyphics or geographic symbols etched in it. And so this whole thing was interesting, like stuff that I've seen already before on so many other shows, but they brought this up again in this particular documentary. But like I said, I digress. Was founding this journal that was in Jesse Marcel's possession, and now they're trying to figure out if Jesse Marcel actually wrote this. And it was actually his journal, and they committed, it could be his handwriting, but it really wasn't. And they found out it really wasn't his handwriting. And then they go on and says, okay, if it's not his handwriting, then who actually wrote it in this thing? And they're trying to determine who wrote in the journal. And for some reason, they couldn't figure out who actually wrote this thing. Who went in this journal? Who this journal actually belonged to? And they really, after 6 hours of this documentary, they really couldn't find it, find who it was. But they did talk to several other people. In terms of a 6-hour thing, they padded this thing out. They focused so much on this journal. It was ridiculous. They could have talked to other people. They could have shown other theories, what happened with Roswell that you've seen in so many other shows, like the Unsolved Mystery story, or the In Search Of, which they actually did brought up the In Search Of episode, which I believe it might still be on YouTube. I told me the one that was hosted by Leonard Nimoy, the original series In Search Of, which Jesse Marcel Sr. was actually interviewed for, and he gave couldn't believe there's so much of it, and he described the debris field, and he ran this whole explanation of what it looked like. There's no way that it came from our planet, it came from somewhere else. And of course, there was also that movie, the 1994 movie with Roswell, starring Clyde McLaughlin and Maureen Sheen, which also goes into the whole thing. It was all about the whole Roswell crash and everything else. And if you want to see it, that movie is on YouTube. It's a UFO, Roswell, the UFO cover-up. That's how it was titled, but it's the actual movie Roswell, and which was quite good. So check that out if you haven't seen it as well. And so they talk about that. But the funny thing is, they talk about the In Search Of episode, because Jesse Marcel Sr. was interviewed for that. But they didn't talk about the Unsolved Mystery show. The only other show about Roswell, they made a brief mention, and I do mean brief, was in 2002, the Sci-Fi Channel did an archaeological dig. And this show is still up on YouTube, called The UFO Crash Starting New Evidence, where they did an archaeological dig at the supposed crash site. And they had Bill Dorman, who was in charge of that dig, and he was interviewed in the History's Greatest Mystery show. And what they don't mention, which was mentioned in another show that the History Channel did with the Ancient Alien series called The Relics of Roswell. And they mentioned that and that show was only like 2-3 years old, the Relics of Roswell show, that like 20 years for the Sci-Fi Channel dig, archaeological dig of Roswell. They said that all the soil samples that they took at the supposed crash site, still to this day, it's still never been tested. at least at the time of that particular documentary, all the soil samples they took in the archaeological on the dig in the 2002 dig still has not been tested. Why has not been tested? All these years it has not been tested. I mean, I was just dumbfounded when I heard that. It says that it hasn't been tested. It's still in the safe in the vault in the safe deposit box in the bank in Roswell, and it hasn't been tested. And all these 20 years later, it hasn't been tested. Why has it not been tested? I mean, that's what I want to know. And so they do go into that in this series, because they stretch this whole thing out over 6 hours, and like I couldn't believe it. I watched the whole thing in one night. I watched the whole thing, and that's why I was hoping out of it. Cause I watched the whole thing in one whole night, and it's like unbelievable. They focus so much in this journal and not, the actual theories of what actually happened. Well, they did go into theories with the mogul balloons, which in 1995, I think it was like 94, and then again in 1997, they came out, or the U.S. military finally came out, or the U.S. Navy finally came out with a statement saying what it was at Roswell. And that was this high experimental balloons called mogul balloons. Now, if it was really the mogul balloons, people would know about it back then, because everybody knows what a balloon is. I mean, come on. I mean, it's like an insult to anybody's fate, to Jesse Marcel's intelligence. I mean, he was an intelligence officer, and to this day, they're still trying to make Jesse Marcel look like an effing idiot, not to know that this was a balloon. I mean, he could tell what a balloon is. I mean, especially the foil. Two of them might have some high tech struts and everything else at that time, but you could still tell the difference that it was a weather balloon or a sensor. What the mogul balloons were supposed to be for was to detect if the Soviet Union or the old USSR at the time were setting off nuclear bombs or testing the nuclear devices. And so the United States decided to make up these balloons and flow high in the air, and it was as big as the Washington Monument, or almost as big as the Eiffel Tower in Paris. That's how big this thing is. And so if that's what it is, then how come they never went searching for it? If it's such a top secret, high tech, at least high tech for 1947 standards, this balloon, how come they never look for it? How come they didn't even look for it? I mean, if they lost one of their balloons, how come they didn't go looking for it? I mean, that's a big question. How come they let Jesse Marcel hold the bag, so to speak, and make him look like an idiot? And those are the real big question marks that they had back then. Even in 1947, or even in the 90s, when they came out with these mogul balloons. And the other thing they brought up with these alien bodies that they claimed that people found in Roswell, but actually these dummies, these high-tech dummies, that the U.S. military dropped at high altitudes. I mean, no way was it, because these dummies were used, and the mogul balloons were used in about 1952 and 1953, at least 5 to 6 years after this alleged event. So, the supposed event and crash in Roswell. So there's another question. And so actually, of course, the U.S. military says, "Oh yeah, how do you know we weren't using it back then? In '47." I says, "Well, because we have evidence that they have it in 1953, and so using the mogul balloons. So it's like a back and forth thing. So, oh yeah, you never used it. Oh, yeah, we did. Oh yeah, prove it. Prove it that you used it in 1947. And of course, actually, over 75 years later, they're not going to tell you if they used it or not. I mean, it's such BS." It was a UFO crash, folks. I mean, it was a UFO crash, and of course the U.S. military back in the 90s is still trying to convince you that. And the only reason they even came out with a statement then, because it was about to be the 50th anniversary of the Roswell crash, and they wanted to put a kibosh on the whole thing, and they had this Navy spokesman come out and tell everybody what it was. It was Project Mogul and dummies. That's what people thought it was, alien bodies. And if one of the first questions, or the first question by the reporters, says, Well, that's what it was. Now, how come it took you 50 years to tell the public what it was? Instead of, you go tell how long it took you waiting like 50, for the 50th anniversary of the supposed crash to tell everybody what it is. I mean, it's just BS. It's not even funny. And that's what they, the theories they put in on the 6-hour thing with, Roswell. And I just wish that the History Channel would put in a brand new show just on the Roswell crash and all the theories and what actually happened and actually played out, instead of doing the speculation stuff when with looking for the journal or play interviews of Jesse Marcel himself, his son. Because there's stock footage of the two of them all over the place during interviews, plus interviews with other people that come in, and of course there's also playing other shows. It's on YouTube that talks about the UFO incident, including, of course, the most famous one like I mentioned earlier, the Unsolved. So check out the Unsolved Mysteries story. There's season 2, episode 1 of Unsolved Mystery with Robert Stack, because that's the best version of it, and the real version, in my opinion, of it, as well as the Insert Show with Leonard Nimoy. Look for that. Plus the UFO crash, starting new evidence, hosted by Brian Gumble. Please check those shows out. Plus the actual movie, Roswell, the UFO cover-up, and that's the title of it, or the Roswell movie. Check it out on YouTube. Check all of them out here on YouTube. But that's my review of the movie of History's Greatest Mysteries, Roswell. And that's all I'm going to put in the title, History's Greatest Mysteries Roswell review. So please don't click on the video, please rate it, please subscribe to my channel, please forward this video to your Facebook pages, and you can check out all my reviews on here on my YouTube channel at rowdyc.com, so WDY, C.com, it's the homepage of my reviewer, Chris Lee Moore, and please check out all of his videos on his website. Thanks for watching, and catch you next time.